14 WILI and 95.3 FM presents Hometown Threads, a closer look at our community and the people that make it go. Every week, you'll hear uplifting stories from our local businesses and our neighbors. Now, here's our host for Hometown Threads, Keith C. Rice.
Here we are. Welcome into episode 57 of Hometown Threads on 14 WILI 95.3 FM. Willimantic Today Facebook. Let's see, we got Spectrum 192, the WILI YouTube page. And I'd like to thank J. Matt Rupar. Always does a fine job producing our 5 o'clock talk shows. And, like myself, wearing many hats here around the radio station. Of course, big thanks to our sponsor, Liberty Bank. Be community kind. And right before we turn on the mics and the cameras, we all know this guy here, Pat Prue. I was just about to say, this might be history in the making. I don't think you've ever done a two-parter. Just Pat was telling us stuff before we went on the air. I'm like, I look at Matt, I go, maybe we should do a part two, like in the next week. But it's a pleasure to welcome in Pat Prue Law Firm. He made the long journey. Three floors down. Did you take the elevator or did you take the stairs?
I did the elevator because I didn't feel like doing the stairs.
Of course, 4th floor, 720 Main Street, Willimantic, right here. Of course, we're on the bottom level, WILI. And it's great to finally have you in here. And Hometown Threads, of course, comes your way every Tuesday, 5:05 to 5:30. And, of course, you can watch it anywhere, as I just mentioned, Willimantic Today Facebook, WILI YouTube, and Spectrum 192. So you grew up in the area. We'll get to the law firm. There's so many stories that you were telling us, like off the air, and you're so involved in town. But tell us, where did it all start from the very beginning for Pat M. Prue?
And before I even begin now, folks, for me looking at Keith, it's like looking at his dad. I've known his dad for a long time, and it's fascinating how kids grow up and they're exactly like their parents. I think my boys are like that too. I grew up in Willimantic, went to Wyndham High. Was active in sports at Wyndham High, captain of this team, captain of that team, editor of the school newspaper. Went to UConn, went to Winnick, which is a Western New England law school. Lived here all my life. When I was 18, I got really active in politics. I mean, really active.
Around here?
In here and in Washington. Involved in a congressional campaign, a governorship campaign, that type of stuff. So I was busy. All right. I remember in town, folks, you remember there used to be a Friendly's when Willimantic had active stores like that.
Mm-hmm.
And we were laughing off the air, folks, that no one sees me doing the Wayne Norman show anymore. It's not because I don't love Wayne Norman, I do. It's just that I have trouble getting in here at 9:30 anymore.
I've been begging him before we started Hometown Threads today to bring back that segment because I enjoyed that 9:30 slot every other week with you and Wayno, and you got to do that again.
I'm going to bring it back because people catch me in the grocery store and say, we missed the show.
See?
But the point being is when I was younger and I was in high school, I'd get up every day at 5:30, which you won't see me doing now, folks.
I get up
and
at 5:30.
I'd walk up to Friendly's, and I'd open Friendly's up and do all the Friendly stuff. Then I'd go to school. I'd do my track team and all that stuff at night, do the paper stuff, go home and study.
Wow.
And that was life. Friday and Saturday nights, I had no social life because I was working at Friendly's because I wanted money. So that
was your big time. That was your big job early on in the life of Pat M.
Prue. And then when we were in law school, you need money to get through school. I'd work stocking shelves at Stop and Shop for the third shift.
Wow.
But I've done everything in this town, folks. When I was the probate judge, and you know that I was the youngest probate judge in the history of the state of Connecticut. I was the youngest of a lot of stuff in town. And I'm not just saying that to brag, I was. There were a lot of older people. I tried to get young blood in, so they had me become the youngest alderman in the town. I was the second ward alderman. We ran for my first election. They counted the polls, folks. 206 for me, 206 for a guy who's now a friend of mine named Bill Mee, an exact tie. And then they started doing absentee ballots, and he got the first 6 ballots, and I said, well, my political career just ended, and I got the last 18 ballots.
What year was this?
Oh, God, 1974.
So you went up against Meehan, right?
Billy Meehan.
I just had Heather in here recording a Yukon Spirit commercial, so the Meehan and daughter.
Yeah,
but,
she was just a baby then.
Wow.
And so Bill and I ran that. I won. I became a selectman, and then I did that for a couple of years. Then I decided, friends of mine, I used to have a lot of good politicians now, which would be a story on, folks, on the political history of the older Willimantic with the economic history of Willimantic. We had a story just on that. But a lot of the old guys kind of took me into the wing and said, the career for you, you're going to be a lawyer, you need to be the probate judge. So they talked me out of running for state rep because Andy Carey ran, he was better than me. And so I became probate judge at 27.
At 27.
And that was the youngest judge in the history of the state of Connecticut.
Holy smokes, I didn't know this.
And so I became judge. I was judge for 20 years. And while I was doing that, I started my law firm, the Prue Law Group. And that's now grown to the biggest firm in Windham County. So I started young. I remember when I was 18, folks, standing on the corner of it used to be Nassau's, it was Woolworths, which is a history story, passing out staff for a guy named Bill St. Ange. I remember running a campaign for a guy named Roger Hilsman, who was a congressional candidate, and he had me take people around like Ted Kennedy and those guys. One of my good experiences when I was running this campaign is Hubert Humphrey came to Windham,
Really?
Vice President of the United States, and he'd been retired. He came to Windham and he needed basically a gopher with him. And I got the job, I was his gopher for the day. So I'd be driving with him with the Secret Service.
Oh my God.
And I remember we pulled in one night at the hotel in Norwich, and he had to have dinner alone because he didn't want to eat at the event. And he said, "Come on, kid, sit with me." So I get to sit and have dinner with the Vice President of the United States. Just he and I. He ate, and we talked for a half hour. The guy was absolutely wonderful, and he told me stories about why I needed to get out of politics, because I thought I was going to go big time, because I was involved in politics, and I'd go to Washington and stuff.
And then you were hanging out with Hubert Humphrey. I mean, you
And
probably owes a
but
ticket
hang
right
out
there.
2 seconds, and he said, "Kid, you're not going to be a politician. It's bad for you." He started telling me stories about how he and Lyndon Johnson, the concessions they had to make to become president and vice president of the United States. And that half hour, you never forget. And it was fascinating to deal with the guy. And then he said, "All right, enough political BS. Let's talk Minnesota Vikings." So we spent 10 minutes talking about the
Really?
Minnesota. Yeah, true story. And he flew in. I drove him to the plane. He flew out. Guy was wonderful. And then I remember doing stuff with Ted Kennedy. I met some interesting people when I was younger.
Wow.
Yeah, that was Will Mayer. It's a lot different then than it is now.
This might be the easiest show ever, Hometown Threads, because I'm probably not even going to have to ask a question. This guy's loaded with stories. Pat Prue, of course, Prue Law Firm, having trouble saying that today. 720 Main Street, Willimantic. Of course, brought to you by Liberty Bank, Be Community Kind, J. Matt Rupar. Forgot to do that at the top of the show. Thanks to our sponsor. So, okay, you're rubbing elbows with politicians. You're the youngest probate judge in the area.
Yeah.
Tell us about how the Prue Law Firm came together and how you obviously, was it located before we built this? I say we.
We did build this.
I was in 10th grade when
Yeah.
this building went up. Where was the Prue Law Firm before that?
When I started, I was a judge before I was an attorney. I was finishing law school. I opened my first office, and I used to be Kenny Shane, Bill Navratil. They had an accounting firm on 22 Walnut Street. And my first office was a little walk-up two-room office. And I would sit up there. Folks, I'm going to date myself, but back when I was younger, there was commercials called the Maytag Repairman, who would sit in this empty office and the phone would never ring because Maytag never broke down. That was their whole thing. So my first 2-3 months practicing law, I basically was the Maytag guy. I sit in my office, the phone would never ring. If I got a client a week, I was excited as hell. Now I get a client every 15 seconds, which is great.
Yeah.
But I'd sit there and I'd meet with people and I'd take these interesting cases on. When I was going through law school, I was fortunate enough to work at Connecticut Legal Services with some really good people. I mean, we had several of those who went on to be judges. They're very good guys, and they taught me a lot. And so I learned from them. They made sure I finished law school. They made sure I did the judge thing. And I was also fortunate I had two mentors growing up. One was a judge named Alva Loisel, who people in town, the older ones will remember, was Chief Justice of the Connecticut Supreme Court. He babysat me, and he made sure I went to law school and did stuff. The other guy who took care of me was a guy named Joe Danahy, who was a judge in town, an appellate court judge. These guys were kind of like mentors. If I had questions, I'd go to them, and they'd make sure it was good. So they made sure I went to law school, and I opened a practice, and I did that. And I did that for 2 years, and then a guy named Paul Brody, who had a good practice in town, he's now going on to business. He got out of a law firm. And he joined, there was Brody and Prue. We moved from 22 Walnut Street
I remember that.
to Mansfield, and that was up on 195.
Was there ever, I got to jump in from one
Yep.
side, was there ever a time early on where you said, I don't know if I want to get into law? I mean,
Well, I
you
really
def-
wanted to get into was politics.
Right, I know that, but
And I did law to get into politics.
yeah.
But after a while, I like money. As I got older, there's not a lot of money in politics, if you're honest, and that's the truth. So I started doing the legal stuff, and I started doing stuff I liked. Originally, I did the probate stuff because people said, you make contacts, it's a good business. Then I started getting good at it. I started liking it, dealing with that type of people. I did some criminal stuff when I was younger, and I could tell you folks stories about criminal for hours.
You were
about
telling
of
some
the criminal
stories.
cases.
Oh my goodness.
And I did a lot of family law, because at Legal Services I started the family law department.
What's your favorite kind of law that you like to do?
State stuff I'm doing
State
now.
stuff?
The people are nicer. They're easy to work with. They actually appreciate your help. I've done some criminal stuff, folks, where I'd end up representing people I didn't like, but the law says you got to take them on. I did some corporate stuff, which is fine. Some of those guys are fine. We do a lot of corporate work in our office. But it's been an experience. So I got into it to get into politics, and I never got down to politics. My family needed some help medically, so I stayed here instead of going to Washington. And I still think Washington's the greatest city in the world. I love Washington. But I got here because my folks needed help, and it just worked out down here. I started to practice. It's 45 years now into doing it. And it's been a lot of uphills and downhills because it's a business. And it's been interesting.
Oh, happy, when was your 45th anniversary?
Coming up.
It's coming up. Well, happy early 45th. And we're glad you stayed here because you were also telling us, I don't know how much, tell you, I want to apologize to the neighborhood, which follows Hometown Threads. Ernie and Anita, I'm sorry, we may run a little over because you can sit here all day with Pat. That's why I'm saying we may have a part two, either next week or whatever. But I want to ask you, again, following up on glad you stayed here in Willimantic and in town, we're talking about some of these buildings that are especially like right next door to the radio station. You're tied into some of these properties possibly, right?
Part of the stuff in town, folks, is that, it's funny. I had my high school reunion not long ago. A lot of people who moved all over the country have been here in 50 years. And they came into town. And Wyndham, people may not like this, but it's the truth. Wyndham today isn't the Wyndham when I grew up. When I grew up on Thursday nights, you walk Main Street, it was elbow to elbow. Everybody in town was there. Woolworths was there, which is a store where Nassau's became. It had a long counter. You get down there and have hot dogs and sodas and stuff. At night, people went in there for snacks. I was a young kid. I'd go to the two theaters on Saturday afternoons. My buddies and I would all go to the local theater to see the two black and white horror movies.
Wow.
The Tomato That Ate Chicago and all these big exciting horror movies. But there were people in town that was active. And business was going good. We'd talk about walking Main Street in Willimantic. There was Ron Frechette had a store for a little restaurant diner. Nady Mandel had Sweeney's Stationery. And you could go Jim's hot dog stand. Lamort's newspaper.
Lamort's. I remember
You
Lamort's.
could walk Main Street. There are a lot of businesses that don't exist today. And there was a lot of people downtown to use the businesses. So now what's happened is you got developers thinking they're going to make a killing in Wyndham. Like Mr. Kelly next door, who said he was going to do all these things, hasn't done any of them. And so what happens is that there are a few of us in town who've got the financial capability maybe of turning things around. The question is, folks, is investing in town, are you going to get your money back? And every investment you put, you got to get something back. We put more than $2.5 million into the building we're in now. And unfortunately, the building's basically the same value as it was when we built it.
Wow.
So we don't get a great return on your money. So the question is, do we want to fix that building next door? Do we want to do the hotel hooker? Do we want to do anything else? And
What do
it's a
you
tough
want to
thing.
do? What's on top of your mind right now?
On top of my mind right now, folks, is due to my age, I want to go play golf, take some walks, enjoy myself. When I started practicing, there were 25, I think, attorneys in Wyndham. And I could rattle off a list of names to some of the old folks. Say, I remember him, I remember that guy. We just lost a good guy the other day, Jack Renacci's a good guy.
Yeah.
He and I started together.
Talk a little about Jack. What a loss.
We just started together, and he's gone. I don't want that to happen to me, unfortunately. So my staff's making me tone it down a little bit. But you're not seeing new professionals come into town. I was chairman of the board at Wyndham Hospital for 3 years. I ran Wyndham Hospital as a CEO for a year, so I ran a hospital. And we had trouble bringing in professionals because there's not a lot here for them. I mean, our town manager is going to try to push the town and say how great it is, and Tommy DeVivo is. And it's a good town with a lot of good people, but I remember bringing in a CEO out of Cleveland. He came here and he wanted the job at Wyndham because it's a good job. His wife landed, walked Main Street with me and said, "You got to be kidding me."
What year was this?
1990.
Really?
And
She said, "You got to be
"You
kidding
gotta
me."
be kidding me. What am I going to do in this town? There's no stores and nothing like that. And there isn't. There's not a Hurley's anymore to buy a suit.
So where did they go?
They ended up going back to Cleveland and getting a job in a different part of the country. Wow. And so I brought in, try to recruit doctors, etc. It's a tough sell because of the climate in the community. It's a poor town.
Honestly, do you see it on the way up right now?
No.
Beyond? No?
I don't see it up because quite candidly, the people in town have got some money to do some things. We're all a little older, and we're doubtful if we put our money in, are we going to get a return on the investment? I mean, I know people now are saying, Pat, you shouldn't say bad things about town, but maybe we need to tell a little bit of the truth. And when I started out, there was a group of people, Lester Force, Eichen Gorham, Gene Middleton, guys who had money and investments in the community. They would turn things around, and they would do things. We have a tough time getting that group together now. There's a few of us, but what do we got to do to turn it around? And I could get into more political stuff. People would hate it, but it's reality that if we're going to renovate Main Street, we got to have people who can buy things on Main Street. And us being as poor a community as we are, there's not a lot of money to spend on stuff in the town. It just isn't there. And so we've got to start about how do we bring in some newer people. So Kelly's idea of the student departments in town to get more college kids downtown is a magnificently good idea. It would work. It's a great idea. The apartments over here for some professionals would be, we need to start bringing in some more professionals. And we need to start doing that. It can be done, but it's a lot of hard work. And part of the thing,
How do you bring those professionals in, really?
we need to change the attitudes in the town. I'm going to really set the town of Wyndham off now. They're all going to be here in 3 minutes killing me. I happen to lead a thing called the Pagio Trust. We got a couple $1 million. We've gone to the town and offered to use some of that money for good. We'd fix the renovation, do some work on the outside facades on Main Street. We offered a program where we would give money to companies and businesses who wanted to start up. We would pay your first few months' rent.
Do you get
and the
pushback?
salaries. It got pushback. All
Wow.
right? Years
Really?
ago, folks, I'm just going to jump on Wyndham for a minute. I was head of buying you a new park in town, and it's out in Wyndham Center. And I found the land. We searched for months. We got the land. We bought it. We came to the town of Wyndham, town manager, a guy named Paul Shue. We came to him with $2 million. People in town like Jack Sumner said, I'll give you $250,000 to name the soccer fields after me. And other people did the same thing. We did a lot of work. Me, John Lesko, Ray Pittman, a lot of good people. Town of Wyndham didn't want to spend the money and make the effort, so they killed the park.
Why?
Now they're talking about building it over again. So the committee's a good committee. They don't have the resources that I do to go raise the money to do it. And back then, years ago, a few people in town didn't want the park, and I won't get into more names, but they killed that park and it never got built. We had designs for soccer fields and baseball fields and walking trails and all of that, and we had the $2 million to pay for it. And it's on record in an actual meeting when we said, here's the money. And the town said, no.
Why do you think that happens? Why? There's something going on.
Some of the older people, I'll give you another story. I'm going to tell you stories, folks, for a while. We're talking about my
It's all
law
you,
firm.
Pat. We're with
But I'll give you
Pat
another
Brew
story.
here. Pat Brew.
When I was on the board of Aldermen, we had federal grants to do all the renovations in Willimantic. We had a grant to renovate and make Riverview Park along the river, along with rebuilding our building. That was going to be a walking trail. I still have the plans from Bridge Street down to the thread mill. Spectacular park along the river. We lost by one vote. And I won't mention the name of the selectman. He voted it down because the estimate was going to cost the town of Wyndham about $40,000 a year to renovate and maintain the park. So we voted against it. We lost by one vote. That walked away from a $5 to $6 million grant. That would have turned Willimantic, it would have been almost like San Antonio. It was a spectacular plan. We have consistently shot ourselves in the foot. Years ago, we had a plan to put a waste management plant up next to the airport. That would have brought the town of Wyndham several, I think $3 or $4 million a year. That lost by 12 votes because they thought it was a bad thing for the town of Wyndham. And that was a guy named Tom Ritter, when I was Speaker of the House, Chairman of the Board of Yukon. I was his attorney. We put this plan together, Walter Polakevich. This town consistently votes against themselves on good business decisions. And after a while, those of us who tried doing it started to say, well, why are we doing it again? So a guy like Tommy DeVivo was a really good mayor. He's trying to get things going. I think what he's got to do, and if he's listening, he ought to do it. We've got to get the group of 8, 10, 12 people who can make things happen and do stuff. Because at the present time, people are saying good things with best intentions, but they're not closing the deal.
Closing the deal.
You know, they got to close the deal on a lot of deals.
Pat M. Prue is with us. Prue Law Firm, 720 Main Street, Willimantic. Of course, right upstairs from the radio station here, 4th floor.
It's about to get firebombed from what I'm saying. Anyway.
Keith C. Rice on what could be the most electric hometown threads ever here. Episode 57, brought to you by Liberty Bank, Be Community Kind. And, okay, so you talked a little about the town. We're going to get into the law firm and your staff and all that tremendous staff. Before we get into that, are there any stories that you could share, maybe some briefly, before we spend some time on the law firm and your staff and all that? Tell us
You want stories about
Give some
Willimantic?
stories.
Because you want stories about the law.
About situations you ran into, kind of like what you told us, before we started the show.
So one of the things I'm going to tell you, folks, Keith was saying, what do I do if I don't practice 40 hours a day? I'll probably start writing a book because I've got enough stories out of town and cases I've run into that are small town law. You read John Grisham, and it's not really small town law.
What about the show Suits? I've asked you about that. I'm so hooked on Suits. I know I'm late to the party on that, but
my wife had made me watch Suits last night for the first time ever.
Do you like it? Or
No.
You don't? It's corporate law.
It's not corporate law.
It's not?
It's TV corporate law.
It's TV corporate law.
One of my good friends at Wyndham High, Lizzie Wilcox, she was the first girl to go to Yale. She went to Yale. She's now a major partner in the biggest firm in New York City. And I don't think she'd tell me that that's what it's like. I'm laughing. I looked at the show last night. These guys wearing $3,000 suits, which I've done before, but no. And the girls are dressed like the models.
But you gotta like the storyline a little, right? I mean, I know
it's all fake.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
Anyway,
It's not small town Willimantic.
No. It's New York City.
Small town Willimantic is stuff like.
Yeah, go ahead. Tell some stories.
Oh God. We can tell stories about some of the stuff we've had in town. I mentioned one story that's public record, so I can mention it. We had a case at one point where we had a person who was, in my mind, mentally imbalanced. She came into the office with a gun one day, and my staff all panicked, which they normally would. And I walked her outside, and I'm walking down the hallway near the building. She said to me, "I'll always carry a gun with me, 24/7, and if somebody has behaved themselves, I'm going to use it." And she showed up at my house 3 weeks later. We were arguing. I was town attorney. She was arguing over a tax thing I issued. And she was here with some other people. And my kids were from me to you 5 feet away.
Oh, my
And
God.
her hand was in there in the pocket, and I knew it was in the pocket, which is her gun. She later admitted it was her gun. And so she reached out pocketbook, and I did. I pushed her out the door. I'm going to protect my kids. And
What were your kids doing? Like freaking
kids
out?
was watching this. No, they didn't know she had a gun. And so she got arrested for having a gun. And the court ended up saying, "Mr. Prue, you shouldn't have thrown her out. You should have let her come in your house with the gun." I go, "No, I don't think so." And the court wouldn't let me raise all the stuff about the gun. The judge knew it in private. The judge said, "We can't let you bring that up, and it's too detrimental to her." And so that's a Willimantic case.
Are you allowed to tell us a story like that happened outside the radio station when the building was when they were building?
What about the nutcase chasing me with a gun?
Are you allowed to say that?
Yeah, that
All right.
stuff. But this is a fun town. You wonder why I'm happy to stay in Willimantic. We're building this building one night, and while the foundation's being built, my wife and the kids and I are in the yard here, and all of a sudden this guy comes racing by me towards my car, which is the only car in the lot, and he jumps in the car looking for my keys to take off. Meanwhile, police are chasing him, and your attorney now talking is not the brightest guy in the world. I reached into the car and pulled the guy out, and he pulled a gun, pointed at me, and I looked at him, and he looked at me, and he took off running down the street.
How long would you say he had that gun right in your face?
3 or 4 seconds.
Wow, that's long if you think about it. Oh my God!
And the cops later on, Chief Hussey was there, yelled at me saying, "Prue, you're an idiot. The guy had a gun, he could have shot you." I said, "Didn't even enter my mind. I went out of my car."
John, I see the.
And
Of course,
the cops all yelled at me, were clients of mine going, "The guy had a gun." And they caught the guy.
Oh.
He did a robbery further up Main Street. That was Willimantic. Another fun story while we're talking about being at 720 Main Street is that we're looking out the window of my building one day, and there's this naked guy running on the footbridge. And the police and the firemen are trying to figure out how we're going to catch this guy, because nobody wanted to touch him. And they ended up wrapping a blanket around him. So we had that. We had the day we built the building, we all moved in here. Your father can tell you the story. The whole building staff is looking out my 4th floor window at the building next door, and we're going, "What the hell is it?" The people there were college kids, and they had a python that had to be 10, 12, 14 feet long. Gigantic python.
God, he's serious.
Wrapped around the window, staring at my staff 8 feet away out of the window. And we always laugh about that. So only those things happen in Willimantic, I guess. I don't know.
But we're glad you stayed. Oh my God!
And this building also, folks, while you're listening, is haunted.
Wait, which?
This building is haunted.
Wait, 720 Main Street is haunted? You're telling me this now, and I'm 52, well, almost 52
This
years old?
building used to be the location for a radio station, a radio store. You buy medical. It was famous for being haunted. And my staff has been here at night at 3 in the morning working because I got a great staff. They would tell stories about hearing somebody walk around upstairs. And I didn't believe that. So I was here one night, listeners, and my back is to my hallway, and I can hear somebody walking up the hallway, and you can hear them breathing and stepping. And nothing scares me too much. So I get up, walk around the building, see what's going on, and nothing. I went back to work. 2 minutes later, I could hear the guy coming up the hallway again. This time I turned the lights on and walk around and go, "What the hell's going on?" Third time I heard it, I said, "Time to go home."
How long ago was this?
That was 15 years ago. But my staff's heard that 3 or 4 times. So my staff won't work here after 11 o'clock at night.
Maybe the 4th floor is haunted. Matt, have we heard anything on the bottom level there?
You guys aren't here at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah,
Well,
right.
no, there's been times where, the dock actually used to run.
yeah,
The
yeah.
dock was here in the middle of the night
So
a few
this
times.
was famous for being a haunted building.
Oh my God! No, wait. Before this building went up, what was here? Like,
This used to be many years ago. It was a building, and Ziska does a great story on Willimantic history, by the way, in the Chronicle. It used to have in here was radio. A guy would sell like, not microphones, all kinds of musical stuff, guitars and saxophones and stuff like that. And it was haunted. And there also used to be, right, we're sitting here, used to be down behind the building where the parking lot is now, used to be a train station.
wow. Did my father know the haunted myth about this?
I don't know if your father knows about it.
Wow, interesting.
I'll have to tell him to stay with me one night at 3 o'clock. See if he stays.
Yeah,
We went
let's
through
all
a
have a
time.
party here.
We
Let's
went
meet.
through a time and didn't talk about my law firm once.
Well, we're not out of time. We're gonna give you. I want you to mention your staff. Talk about how great they are. Anything else you want to mention about Prue Law Firm? I apologize to Ernie and Anita. We're running a little over.
Ernie
here.
will understand. He understands. Because he knows how good the Prue Law Firm is. That's all I'm going to say about that. But we're the biggest firm in this part of the state. Our attorneys, unlike other attorneys, and a lot of small attorneys, law firms, everybody does a little bit of everything. My firm kind of prides itself in that each one of my attorneys specializes in certain areas. Like I will do corporate, I will do estate planning. You don't see me doing divorces anymore. We have a specialist. I can't say specialist. Bar Association says you got to concentrate. So each one of my attorneys concentrates in estate planning, which is me. Estate settlement, which is attorney Evelina Ruskowski. Maria Burrell does our family law stuff. She does our litigation. Each attorney concentrates in an area. Each paralegal, and we have 5 of them. They're all wonderful. They each concentrate on real estate, like Allison or Jess does our estate planning, and she can write a will she can do wills better than most attorneys. Donna does our concierge service, which was special service for our wealthier clients. And so Holly and Francesca do our estate settlement. Everybody has a role and they specialize. And because of that, we think they provide better quality work. Now, before I get off the air, we were laughing about the Maytag repairman thing and how I start out one client in the first month. And now we're a very, very busy law firm. We see a lot of people every week.
Well, you're also in Brooklyn and Coventry too.
We
right?
are, thank you for mentioning that. We're in Brooklyn and Coventry because we provide service from the Rhode Island border to Hartford and up to Massachusetts. This is our area, and we cover our client base.
So I know you just mentioned your staff. So basically, this is where I asked my guests. Do you want to thank anybody? By basically, you want to thank anybody else, like your lovely wife.
Mrs. Prue's the one who started me out. Without her, I wouldn't exist. And she tells me that every day. And when she hears this tonight, she'll remind me by not cooking me dinner. So it's a lot more fun when she's here. I can say this now. She goes. We have a place in the Outer Banks, and she goes there 6 weeks at a time and gets away and walks the beach. And it's lonely without her, and I don't eat well without her, and I can't do a lot of my bookkeeping upstairs without her. So she keeps the office operating, and my staff keeps the legal stuff operating, and all in all, everything's going pretty well.
Hopefully, we're not too noisy down here on the
you are.
first level.
You are, folks, just to hear little things that happen, and this is like a family here between their office and ours.
Well, we had a little incident here a few weeks
We did,
ago.
that's what I
Sorry.
mentioned.
Can we go ahead, bring it up?
Yeah.
We got to talk about this.
Yeah. Well, and even because you'll pick on you, Pete Walker, Mr. Walker, Pete.
Oh, Pete
Pete
Nichols.
That used to be Walker.
Pete Nichols, the FM morning show guy. Yeah.
One morning he started a fire, and he was trying to stay in the air instead of putting the fire out, and that kind of upset everybody in the building. And that was fun. But if they burn popcorn down here, folks, all the floors smell it, and the fire department comes. because
Wow.
they burn popcorn.
I guess we do make our presence known.
Yes,
huh?
you do.
All right. Well, time to wrap up episode 57. We could go on. And Pat, one last thing. Why don't you throw out your phone number so anybody who has questions about the town? No, I'm kidding. Don't.
Oh, I'll get questions after today.
You know where to find them. The 4th floor, 720 Main Street.
860-423-9231.
There you go. Right there. He's ready to talk to you. Pat M. Prue from Prue Law Firm. Keith C. Rice. Big thanks to J. Matt Rupar.
I had one more thing.
Yeah, sure.
Those of you who want to call and yell at me for what I said on the air today, you can email me at prue@prulawgroup.com. Doing Wayne's show as much as I did, I'd go upstairs and have 50 emails. Most were nice, some were not nice.
And I'll
but
see.
give it to public.
You're not only on the radio. Your people
I
are
know.
watching this too. So
I'll hear about it.
see, the man doesn't hide. I respect him for that. So big thanks to Liberty Bank, Be Community Kind. Episode 57, a little long again. Apologies to Ernie and Anita. And thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. In the words of the great Roddy McCumber.
Bye for now, folks. Bye for now.
And that concludes another edition of Hometown Threads. Got a story for Keith? Reach out to him on Facebook by searching Keith C. Rice or email him at krice@hallradio.net. Don't forget to tune in next week on 14 WILI and 95.3 FM, as well as the Willimantic Today page on Facebook.